of arriving at the best choice by weighing up all the alternatives. And in this sort of a context, then a heuristic really helps us get there faster. Now, there's a whole lot of heuristics that have been, identified as universal heuristics. There's quite a lot of them. I'm not going to explain these. You can Google them. I mean, there's enough explanation for all of them available there. Things like trust familiar faces is a classic one. So buy a popular brand is another example which works across categories. So there are heuristics which are universal. And there are heuristics which might be developed to deal with specific sorts of individual situations. So there would be individual heuristics. There would be people who say, I always do what my mom did, or whatever. So it could be something that's specific to the person that has evolved as a result of that person's experiences, learning, and that sort of thing. And there would be others which are actually fairly universal and work across people and situations. The other thing that helps us get to good decisions and get there fast is the notion of satisficing. Satisficing basically means that we don't necessarily always look for the best possible option. We are happy with something that's good enough. So if it's working well enough, that's good enough for me. So there's a tendency to make do with whatever people have. So of course we have our dreams, we have our aspirations about ideals, and we know what we want ideally in a car or a shampoo or whatever. But if I have something that's working well enough for me, I don't want to spend the time and effort constantly to look for a better solution. It's too much of a bother. A shampoo or a soap or a toothpaste, is probably a very small part of my life. And maybe there is my dream shampoo available somewhere, but if I'm happy with the brand that I'm currently using, I'm okay. And that's what satisficing means. If I find something that works well enough, I stop. Yeah, and that actually is responsible for a lot of the inertia-based loyalty and a lot of habitual behavior that we encounter. That is why it is actually hard to change people's behavior, because once they're comfortable in their ways, once something is working well enough, they're okay. They're not challenging themselves constantly. Yeah, so it's then you have to sort of trade that off against your ideal, the dream brand or the dream solution to a problem, and say, okay, how much of an effort is worth it? So what we're seeing here is that there are two different outcomes of this unthinking kind of automatic behavior. The first is tuned out behavior, habitual behavior, that is immune to external influences. And the other actually is behavior that is shaped by random contextual contexts. The kind of example that I gave you about the organ donation, where just where you have to tick, what kind of box you have to tick, can change your behavior dramatically. And that might seem not so random, but sometimes there are plenty of examples of how things in the environment which have nothing to do with the decision that you're making can actually influence your behavior substantially. And that's again because you're acting based on your system 1 patterns, and your system 1 responds to certain stimuli in a certain way, and which might be completely dealing from what you really want, what your deep motivations or preferences are. So let's take a look at some examples of context-dependent behavior. Framing. The way a choice is framed impacts the way people will decide. And that happens because often people don't know what they like and how much they like it. They need an anchor, they need a benchmark to evaluate things against. They need some sort of frame of reference. So if you were to ask to decide what the price of each of these tubs of ice cream was, how much would you say was this tub? I'm not asking you to give a price, think about it. And then think about that one. How much would you pay for that separately? Not if you were asked to compare them side by side, but if you were presented just this tub individually, and then separately some other people were presented just that tub. What are the chances that people would think this tub was a higher price versus people thinking that tub was a higher price? So how many of you think that this one would command a higher price? And this one? Yeah. So it's the 5-ounce tub that actually commands a higher price if you're seeing it in isolation. And that's because it seems fuller. It seems like it's brimming over with generosity. It's a 5-ounce tub, it's got 7 ounces of ice cream. You've got nothing else to compare it with. What you're looking at individually is a cup that's full, chock-a-block with ice cream. Here, the ice cream seller seems stingy. He hasn't filled it up to the brim. And so when you're looking at this in isolation, it seems like you're not getting a really good deal. So you put a lower price on this. Of course, when you compare it side by side, you will say this is more expensive. I mean, so we're not stupid. So, but it's just that it's when you're looking at it in individual terms, then you need and the frame of reference then becomes how generous is the scoop? Am I getting a good deal? Such a large cup and only so much ice cream, but such a small cup packed to the brim, and that's choice. Another example of external frames. When people are asked which wine they're likely to asked to make a choice, there's a $12 wine and a $17 wine. This is the kind of split that we get. And one experiment. And then you add another there. And the interesting thing is that nothing much happens there. It's not that a huge number of people have opted for that, that's just 2%. But look what's happened here. A huge number of people have shifted to the middle option. Yeah? And that's happening because you suddenly feel really cheap buying the lowest price wine when there's another one. When there's a $28 bottle, $12 seems really dingy. It's like, oh my God, I can't be this cheap. I have to actually move up to the middle one. And so the way the choice, it's actually the same bottle that I'm choosing. I mean, it's either this or this. But suddenly, this one doesn't look as appealing as it did when it was just two. Yeah? And so the frame of reference has shifted. And I'm saying, actually the middle one. So let me not spend too much, let me not spend too little. Let me just be safe and go with the middle option. So when people don't know too much about a situation, and they don't have any frames of reference, they create their own. And these are examples of heuristics. Saying don't be too cheap, don't be too expensive, be safe, middle should be good, and you sort of making a quick decision based on that. There are also internal frames that people have. And I love this particular example. There is, imagine that you've got yourself a ticket for a play that you've been wanting to see for a really long time. You're really excited. You are making your way to the theatre, you reach the theatre, and you find that you've lost the ticket. And the ticket cost you, maybe the ticket cost you 500 rupees. And you're wondering now what to do. There is the option of buying another ticket, getting into queue and saying, okay, fine, let me buy another one, I've lost one. Or just going home. Okay, now imagine a different scenario where you've got your ticket, same price, you've reached the theatre. You don't have your ticket, sorry. You reach the theatre with some money in your wallet, intending to buy the ticket at the theatre. You reach the theatre and you find that you've lost 500 rupees from your wallet. You have more money, but somebody's stolen 500 rupees. So you had maybe 3,000 rupees and now you have 500 less. What do? Do you still buy the ticket? Yeah. What you usually find is that in the first scenario, people say, I've lost the ticket, let me go home. There's the sense of loss is far more powerful there because I've lost the ticket. And in the second scenario, I've lost 500 rupees and I'm irritated, but I still spend some money and buy myself the ticket. But the amount of money that I've actually lost is the same. What's happening here is my internal accounting process. Saying this money was for the ticket, I spent it, it's gone, it won't come back. Versus this money was in my wallet, some of it's gone, but I still have money for the ticket. Yeah. In rational terms, it's the same decision that you're making, but the emotional value that you attach to something that you've lost and how much you're willing to pay to compensate for it, whether you have a sense of loss or whether you don't, depends on how you're thinking about that problem. So actually, external frames as well as internal frames are really important to understand. And the really important learning here also is that the brain is predisposed to accepting the frames that we are given. So if we don't have anything and we create our own internal frames, but if we are presented an external frame, we actually tend to passively accept it. Remember system 1, there is a reluctance to sort of exercise your system 2 and challenge information that you're being given. And this is a TED talk that I'd seen recently, which I thought was a very good example of external framing, and I thought it'll be a good example to put in here, which is the whole dialogue in the media about the crisis of battered women. Many societies have a problem of this nature, yeah, and very often in the media, in the conversations that we have, this is the way it is described, the crisis of women who are battered by the men in their lives. And the problem usually is as simple as, a person called John beats a woman called Mary, and it's reframed as Mary is beaten by John, so Mary suddenly, gains more prominence compared to John. It then becomes Mary is beaten. John vanishes from the picture. Mary is beaten. Mary is battered. Mary is a battered woman. Suddenly it's Mary's problem. Yeah? And we're talking about what do we do about Mary's problem, whereas actually it could also be this. John beats Mary. What do we do about John's problem? Very, very, very different frames for the exact same situation. Yeah, so, and we don't challenge it. When I'm sort of presented this problem of battered women, I accept it. I think of it as a problem of battered women. I don't think of it as a problem of battering men. We never hear that term at all, men who batter. Yeah. Another less grim example. This is a slide that I stole from a colleague of mine. I thought it was really funny. He asked this question: if you could wake up in another skin, what would be the coolest ethnicity to be? Again, he got lots of responses. I would like to be Brazilian, Chinese, whatever. So there's a whole lot of responses that he got. Just 2 or 3 of those people asked a question like this: are you kidding me? What do you mean coolest ethnicity? How can an ethnicity be cool? What kind of a stupid question is that? Yeah, so you ask a question, it's a really dumb question, but people answer it. Yeah, okay, you're asking me coolest ethnicity, I tell you, coolest ethnicity. Very few people actually challenge the question, the idiocy of the question. Yeah, and that's an important learning for us, because if people are operating on system 1 and they will respond to the questions we ask them, we will get answers. It's important to understand that what are the questions we are asking? Are the questions really useful, meaningful questions? Because we are going to plant some frames in people's heads the minute we ask them a question in a certain way. So it's useful to understand how people are framing their choices, of course. That's useful knowledge for us. But more importantly, because frames are not challenged, it's vital to think about how we frame our questions. Yeah, and in the way we, ask questions, in the way we sequence questions, in the way we create and design stimulus for testing and researching. So knowing that people will respond to the frames as much as to the question is a really vital thing to remember. Another example of context influencing behavior is priming. Priming is simply the idea that our behavior can be shaped by influences in the environment which we are unaware of. So we can actually create situations in the environment that cause people to behave in a certain way. Now this was an experiment that I'm going to portray, but some of these influences seem to be completely random. And the lemon experiment is one where there were two sets of students, matched panels, put into 2 different rooms, asked to do a task. One of the rooms had the smell of a lemon cleanser, a citrus cleanser. The other room had no such smell. Apart from that, the experiment was designed to make everything as similar as possible across the 2 groups. So both the groups were given a memory test first. They were flashed a list of words. Some of these words were to do with cleaning, wipe, wash, laundry, fresh, that sort of thing. And there were other words as well. In the room where there was the smell of the cleanser, guess what happened? Many more people remembered the words to do with cleaning. In the other room, we didn't see any such difference in the kinds of words that were remembered. But in the room with the cleanser smell, many more of the cleansing-related words were remembered. Another version of the experiment. Same conditions, one room with cleanser smell, the other room without. People were asked to list the chores that they had done that day, or they were planning to do that day. Guess which room wanted to do more cleaning-related chores? Yeah, the one with the lemon cleanser. Then there is an example, another version of it actually influencing their behavior. Both rooms were given a crumbly cookie to eat. A cookie that made a big mess on the table while they were eating it. Guess in which room people were more likely to clean up the mess that they had made. The room with the lemon scented cleanser. So that's, and people were not aware of the smell. It was a very mild smell. So when they were asked about whether they'd noticed any smell in the room, nobody really, commented on it. So it's just a subtle sort of influence that's acting on them, that's reminding them of the act of cleaning, and that is actually triggering their behavior. So there's a whole body of experiments on priming and how behavior can be primed through temperatures, through colors, and we intuitively understand this. I mean, this whole phenomenon of the bakery smell in a supermarket, how that sort of puts you in a good mood and makes you shop more. We understand that as core researchers, when you're sort of doing creative groups, we sort of decorate it brightly. We have bean bags, we have bright colors. When we want people to be warm and cozy, we have lovely sofas and that people can sink into. So we are careful with our focus group rooms and how we design the facilities, because we understand instinctively that people can be primed to behave in a certain way. So this is just a formal sort of learning that there is this sort of phenomenon that's going on, and we need to be mindful of that. So that brings us back to the fact that motivations, needs, behavioral intention does not always translate into the actual thing that we do. Sometimes there's a distance between the two. It's not that the two are completely divorced, but that motivation sometimes form one part of the whole puzzle. And there's a whole lot of other stuff that's going on, whether it's habit, whether it's contextual, environment, related influences that are actually guiding what we ultimately end up doing. Now, the question about what is it that behavioral economics that's telling us now that's really new? Didn't qualitative researchers always know that behavior is not rational, that we are guided by intuition and emotion, that we can't always explain what we do? Words are poor tools. People don't mean what they say or say what they mean. Yes, they did. So when we talk about behavioral economics, this is a question that very often comes up. And that's true. A lot of this is stuff that we've known always. But I think the challenge here is that behavioral economics usually pits itself against a very positivist perspective of human nature, which is the idea of rational decision making. So behavioral economists are saying that people are not rational. The theory of rational decision making is wrong, and look at all of this evidence of how people behave irrationally. But as qualitative researchers, we've actually lived in the world of psychoanalysis, and that's our perspective. So we let go of this a long time ago, and that's why this question arises. That what's new here? Some of it seems like it's familiar stuff. When we start comparing these two, is when we actually understand what is it that behavioral economics is telling us now. What is the difference between this and this? And that to me is actually the important part of all of this, because some of this learning is familiar. I do agree with that. So this is the common ground. So when we say what's new, this is actually the common ground between what behavioral economics tells us and what traditional qualitative researchers, many of us here in the room, have always known. And this is actually the difference. The difference is the idea of motivated behavior, meaning that our behavior is shaped by enduring beliefs, enduring needs and preferences, deep underlying motivations, that we are driven by ideal needs, ideal solutions to our needs, and the focus on our feelings, our perceptions, our attitudes, and our needs. That entire body of work versus the idea of automated, unthinking behavior. The idea that sometimes motivations and behavior are not interlinked, and that behavior can be shaped by contextual factors, that we are satisficing, we are not maximizing, we are not always seeking ideal solutions. And the focus on choices and what people really do, as opposed to what they feel or what they want. And that's really the difference. Not that one is more important than the other. This is the stuff of a lot of qualitative research that we do. But this needs to start becoming more important if we actually want to shape people's behavior. And this is an example of this sort of thing happening. When you see it, you recognize it instinctively and say, yeah, that is what goes on. So here's an example of a brand that's nobody's favorite, that gets chosen very often when friends are working together. And what happens here is that We had a situation here where the market leader was very hard to move, and we had a client's brand that was actually, was a personal favorite. Brand equity scores were very, very high up every time we did the research. It actually was a personal favorite for a large chunk of the segment that the client was targeting. But shares were not moving. Shares were not moving because the market leader was a habitual choice whenever people got together. Whenever people got together and drank, the tendency was to buy a bottle and share it out among friends and finish it over the evening. And the bottle that would be bought would be the bottle that would be acceptable to everybody. Nobody's favorite. I have my personal favorite that I drink at home when I'm drinking by myself. But when I'm drinking with my friends, I buy what they like. So all four of us would be sitting together and buying a brand that is nobody's favorite, but is acceptable to everybody. Classic example of satisficing and using a heuristic that's got nothing to do with my personal preference. Yeah. So, coming back to the new perspective on the unconscious. System one sometimes sounds like what we always believe the unconscious is. I mean, that's how we describe the unconscious. But there is a slight difference in perspective here, and this is the idea that the unconscious is not about repressed emotion, in the psychoanalytic view, but is actually about mental processes that are operating in the background, that are influencing behavior but are inaccessible to the conscious mind. This is the idea of the adaptive unconscious, which cognitive psychologist called Timothy Wilson has talked about. Which basically is describing it as an evolving system that learns from experience, that actually learns to very quickly make decisions based on a whole lot of knowledge that's there in the background, and actually can initiate behavior without too much interference of all of the rational stuff, but based on gut feelings and intuition. And the point that he makes here is that actually it's very hard for people to access their adaptive unconscious. I mean, our notion of the unconscious and the fact that we do use a lot of projective material and sort of enabling techniques, we use indirect questioning, because we do believe that it's hard for people to access their unconscious. This is a different perspective on it, which is to say that it's only through their behavior that people's adaptive unconscious is revealed. It's only by looking at recurrent patterns in their behavior that we will actually understand what is underlying that. So we have to derive that by looking outward at their behavior. Yeah, so sort of becoming biographers of our own lives and then coming up with a narrative to explain it. Which basically means that we're talking about two different entry points. We're talking about one entry point, both of which, by the way, are valuable, because both of which give us very different things. We use meaning and imagery as an entry point, and that's the space of a lot of the qualitative work that we do currently, which is to understand needs, which helps us identify positioning opportunities, to build brand identities. And this is the space where a lot of our traditional tools come in handy, our ways of thinking, and what the heartland of qualitative research. And then there is behavior as an entry point, which is really about understanding habit, unraveling habit, shaping real choices, influencing choices at the point of purchase. And that's where methods that actually focus on what people are doing, whether it's diaries, whether it's live observation, or whether it's recollection, actually become useful. And I'll spend a bit of time now talking about recollection, because diaries, observation, a lot of technology that gives us in the moment stuff these days, gives us stuff that is happening right now. But what is also really, really valuable is going back into the past and understanding how habits have been created. And recollection and getting good ways of recollecting, good, accurate recollections is vital for that. Because again, people's memories, what they think happened, again, there's a lot of uncertain ground there. So there's been a lot of research on how we can actually get people to remember better, and what is the value of this sort of recollection. And what I'm talking about here are real experiences versus perception, actually what happened versus what I think happened, reconstructing something rather than me trying to deconstruct it or explain it, giving a full context, the situation, recreating a scene as if it was a scene from a movie and saying this is what was going on, and a longitudinal view of life versus a snapshot view. So how did this thing happen? How did it evolve? How did you come to start using this toothpaste or shampoo, or how did you come to buy this car, or whatever it is. How did this habit form in the first place? Rather than what's going on now and what you like now.